Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. I'm Vered Kogan, and I'm so thrilled and grateful to have Jeddah Mali with us today. Jeddah is an internationally recognized visionary and change agent, and the creator of the Intelligent Life Model and Mapping System. Her body of work provides a completely new approach to understanding human behavior and how individuals positively impact the collective and the wider environment. Jeddah is a TEDx speaker and has been mentoring and consulting for CEOs, as well as advising and guiding global thought leaders and changemakers from over 60 countries around the world over the last 35 years. She is on the board of the HeartMath Institute and on the steering committee of the Global Coherence Initiative. And that's how I got connected with Jeddah. Her incredible organization, Intelligent Life, specializes in the concept, practice, and application of natural intelligence. And Jeddah, it is such truly an honor and a privilege to be here with you today. Thank you for being on the show.
It's a real pleasure for me too. Thank you for inviting me.
I would love to get started by having you share what is natural intelligence.
In lay terms, because we can put it in scientific terms, and not everybody can necessarily resonate with those. In lay terms, it's like a hidden code that makes everything work, that sort of coordinates and orchestrates life so that all the various elements of it work as one harmonious unit. And so we think of natural intelligence as like the information in a stem cell that tells the cell what its primary role is and function. But like the physical body, those messages, those codes can get a little interrupted. And so it means that the cell then misfunctions. And it's the same of the bigger picture. So this natural intelligence, even though it is pervasive throughout what we call the information field, that is everywhere all at once, also known as the quantum field, not much is known about it. Obviously, quantum scientists study it in depth. But for anyone who's read much quantum mechanics, they'll see that first, it's very hard to decipher. And secondly, it's hard to bring it into an individual level to see how does that affect me, the way I show up as a human being. So the work of Intelligent Life is really to educate us around natural intelligence so that we can understand it, we can access it, and we can start to utilize it because it's there to be utilized.
Thank you. And I'm glad that you kind of ended it with how to utilize it. There is so much pain in the world right now that is going on. I think people just deeply desire to have a yearning for more peace, inner peace, more beauty, more harmony. And how can this natural intelligence, these laws, if you will, of existence, support us in moving toward having more harmony in the world?
Well, you can imagine that harmony in the world is the product of many individuals choosing that. It doesn't come, there is no external source that can be applied to us. It must come from within. So we're the ones that access it, and we're the ones that step into it. We're the ones that resonate with it. And then done across many people, we see then the collective benefit of maybe harmony in the world. And although that seems like a long way away right now, or certainly from where we are today, once we start to examine this, and certainly within our own experience, we see that this fundamental energy of life that gives rise to everything we see, known and unknown, once we start to understand this energy of life, we see that it's predisposed towards certain properties. It has a structure, it has a nature, and it has a function. And these are what you refer to as the laws of existence. In our work, we call it the model of life. So this sort of instructional manual for how this energy operates. So the energy is predisposed towards a state of expansion, is predisposed towards a state of lightness, and it's also predisposed towards harmony. The reason that we don't see that manifest in our world, or we don't feel it internally, is because A, we don't know about it, and B, we don't utilize it, we don't access it. So because it's the fundamental building block of all life, it means that we are made from this. So we have this predisposition, we have this foundation within us, but most of mankind doesn't know about that, and therefore we tend to operate blind. We've made up all sorts of rules on earth about what human beings are, how we should function, what success is, how we get ahead. And we can see that the outcome of that kind of thinking is haphazard at best and destructive at worst. So really our mission, if you like, the purpose of intelligent life is to make this knowledge more available and to help to educate and train people to understand and work with natural intelligence. And a key component is help them apply it in their daily life. So it doesn't just reside as intellectual knowledge, it doesn't just reside as a feeling, but it actually, the principles of natural intelligence start to inform the way that we think, the way that we speak, the way we behave, the choices we make. And that's when we start to get a little bit of traction on moving from where we are now to where we would like to be.
And so for those people who are listening now, and this concept may be newer to them, maybe they're not yet familiar with global consciousness or the quantum field or even really energy. If we were to take it down to the very, very basics right now, what do people need to know about their energy, about the field? What's most important?
I would say first that it is there, that it exists. And even many scientists won't go that far because this energy has proven again and again and again that it is inherently intelligent. And yet many scientists, even while studying the very energy of life itself, won't let themselves cross over that invisible line in the sand, which says, this is just a substance that we can study, to the place where we say, no, this is a sentient, intelligent, responsive, malleable substance that we are made of. And therefore, all of those properties, all of those qualities, that function is available to us. So the first thing is just knowing that it's there. Once we study it a little bit deeper and we start to see how it behaves, it's incredibly encouraging. I said earlier that it's predisposed towards expansion and light and harmony. It has many wonderful properties, all of which are underutilized or ignored. So we are missing a huge part of our legacy as human beings on planet Earth. And we're also missing, this is a crucial component of understanding our fellow creatures and the Earth systems as well, because they're made from exactly the same substance. So it's a beautiful unifying picture that starts to emerge once we look at it. So that's the absolute first thing, knowing that it's there, and it's a very encouraging study. The second is learning a few simple tools as to how to access it within your own experience. Experience is the currency of this energy. We can describe it conceptually, but then it would just stay as head knowledge. If we really want to access it, we need to do that within our own being. And there are very few simple tools and practices that we teach which help people do that. And then, as I said, the third thing is really to look at, okay, now I have this knowledge. Now I have some initial experience. What am I going to do with that? So we are really hot on reminding people that they have a responsibility, once they know about it, once they experience it, to utilize it in their daily lives, to use this to make a difference to their own lives and us as a species, and in the wider sense, us as a planet.
And for those people that may be skeptical as they hear you, what evidence or what can you share with them that can help them consider that this field is in fact sentient, that it is in fact malleable, and that their conscious attention, their personal choice of where to focus their attention can impact that field?
Right. One of the beautiful things about this, even though it sounds somewhat mysterious when we start talking about it, and why haven't I heard about it if it's everywhere, is that it can be accessed very readily within your own being. So within 1 or 2 minutes of sitting quietly, you start to notice that your very presence, the very essence of life, is this energy. And it reveals itself very readily once we start to focus on it. You mentioned conscious attention. It remains, even though it exists, it doesn't come into our experience until we focus on it. And it is that conscious attention which turns it into a living experience. And that's how people can know about it readily. You also mentioned that it's malleable, it's suggestible. And once we see through the tools and the practices we teach that this energy is in fact responding moment by moment to our thought life, it's producing the sensations and patterns that we've come to call our emotions, our feelings. These feelings themselves are made up of patterns of energy in different shapes and different frequencies that we've labeled everything from bliss to hatred. These are just patterns of energy. Our thoughts are patterns of energy. Our body, as we now know from pioneering science, is just simply energy. When we move beyond the atomic level, we get into the subatomic level, this energy starts to appear in a very abundant form. So we're actually living inside a living system that is packed with this energy that is, it's almost like it's listening to us all the time. And as we think, as we feel, even as we speak, our words have power. We're shaping energy. We're using energy. When we speak, we all know that words have a profound effect upon us. This is not just the meaning that we apply post-rationally to those words. Those words have an energetic component too that we feel, that we pick up on and respond to. So once we start to bring our conscious attention into it, we realize that we have this incredible partner, if you like, with us in life that is there at our disposal, but it can't change its nature. It can't change its design, its structure, its function. We have to learn to work with it. And what we see time and time again with human beings is, because they don't know about this, they don't know how to access it, they don't know how to align with it, that gap creates a misunderstanding which leads us to inadvertently shape this energy in ways that we wouldn't intend if we knew we had a conscious choice. So that's the mismatch between it being freely available and yet us not utilizing it as best we can. We see in some of the studies that have been done either at HeartMath or at IONS, where they're looking at the behavior of energy under rigorous parameters. So they've managed to discard some of the variables that might happen for people in day-to-day lives and create a repeatable study which shows that not only do our thoughts have a certain impact on us, but they have an impact on the environment around us, and that is able to be picked up by other human beings. Now, HeartMath sort of refers to this as, the coherent field, which is all the time listening and carrying messages. Our very physiology is designed to both emit and receive those messages. So a lot of the science which is done around the heart and the brain have shown that our system, through our magnetic field, but also through other aspects of our physiology, the whole system is designed beautifully together to work as a very, very sensitive instrument. And they've been able to see that even very subtle changes in how we think and how we feel produces changes in the HRV, which is then carried through the magnetic field to other recipients who are able to pick that up. And they've been able to monitor the correlations between those two people. They've even been able to monitor the correlations between humans and dogs, or humans and trees, or trees and trees. And so that is on an individual level, person to person, or person to some aspect of nature. What we're also seeing through that research is that there is a social effect. So that when people come together, you've spoken to Lynn McTaggart, perhaps you know about Lynn Twist's work, we're seeing that the social groups also tend to settle around a coherent message. And so one individual in the group raises their conscious attention around one aspect, then the rest of the group tends to find that level too and settle at the same level. So this has an impact on the way we think about, groups, particularly leadership. If we're going to lead a group, if we're going to be looking at how we can influence groups of people. But we're also seeing that on a global level, like a super social level, on a global level, using the global coherence technology, that they're picking up that mass events on planet Earth are actually having an effect on the Earth's electromagnetic fields, and certainly that the Earth's electromagnetic fields are having an influence on us as human beings here on Earth. So that aberrations in the Earth's field, either set off by solar activity or some global event, then rebounds back on us because we're living inside that system of energy. So we're seeing, it's early days now, but we're seeing that the human system is incredibly sensitive and subtle, and it is able to do far more than we had given it credit for, particularly if we just see it as physiology. But we're seeing that this isn't just an isolated case, that it happens between people, it happens in much larger sectors of society, and it also is happening globally. So there's a case to be made that what is unifying all of those elements together, we would say, is natural intelligence. It's the network which provides the necessary structure and intelligence for all these phenomena to arise.
And so for those leaders that are listening today, what does this mean for them personally, right? If how they think and feel and speak impacts their own health, their own personal reality, and there is a social effect, as you said, and that influences the global field. What does that mean for them? What is the most important message that you want them to get today?
Most leaders want their teams to be highly functioning. We could have a side conversation about what the motivations for those highly functioning states are, whether it's just simply the bottom line, or whether there's some higher aspiration involved. But without really understanding the mechanics of inspiration and motivation, what we find is that you can apply a stimulus which gives you a short-term lift, but unless that stimulus is backed up with consistent knowledge and practice and application, it tends to devolve again. And so this is why you often find business leaders having to put these motivation injections into their organizations again and again and again, and it doesn't hold, it doesn't stick. Some years ago, it was quite some years ago now, maybe 10 years ago, I came across some research from Forbes magazine, which said that at that time, the US was spending, about over $1 billion a year on change programs. And that when they had gone back after a year, they found that 80% of the information had been lost. So it's a huge waste of resources, a huge waste of time. And anyone within organizations will know this very well. So we wanted to then work with business leaders to expose them to natural intelligence and to explain to them the mechanics of how that works, so that they themselves could expand their own conscious experience, but really understand the mechanics of what is it that the team really wants. It's very hard to get perpetually excited about the nitty-gritty of commercial enterprise. That's not what really motivates human beings. It's something much more fundamental. And again, the energy of life gives us all the clues that we need. And this is why studying it is so important, that the energy itself has a purpose, it has a vision, it has inherent values, it has principles that it operates by, which when you come into alignment with that, automatically produces something of benefit, automatically produces the best outcomes. We as human beings have been so focused on what are all the known inputs that we can tinker with and change in order to get the results that we want. And we've completely overlooked all the unknown inputs which are affecting our outcomes. And purpose, vision, values, inspiration, these are something that the energy itself lends itself to and is so necessary for human beings to feel uplifted, to feel motivated. You don't have any issues with motivation when you attend to those hidden inputs. And so that's why we created our mapping system, to show that there is a progression of this understanding of natural intelligence. So we grow. As we grow, we become more conscious. As we evolve, there's a fairly predictable pathway that we follow. So our mapping shows that there is a sort of step-by-step process to that. We also took 12 indices across those 7 levels and looked at, okay, here are your known inputs, things like the physical environment, maybe the emotional environment, maybe the mental environment, the mindset as well. Maybe your experience. But we've also included in that, before you get to that, all the unknown inputs, all the hidden inputs, which are things like purpose, vision, values, inspiration, motivation. We've included relating, we've included experience, we've included things like identity, because how we show up, how we believe ourselves to be, has an impact. So it's really what we've produced is like a matrix which reveals our relationship with natural intelligence. And in the beginning, it's mostly unknown. But then we can see, if we follow the matrix through, we can see, oh, that's why I'm getting those kind of results, because I haven't factored in the precursors to the things I'm really focusing on, which drive those things and are the natural influence. It's like a river flow. We don't expect the river to just appear in the middle of nowhere and flow to the sea. We know it starts at a spring in the mountains. And that is the natural course of the river's journey all the way to the sea. And life is like that too. It has a source, it has a spring. And we haven't been taught what that is. We haven't been taught how to find it, and we haven't been taught how to work with it. So we're working on very, very narrow parameters with very limited understanding. So I would say for leaders, they do need to inspire and motivate, but they themselves need to be an example of what's possible. It's no good to just be an excellent technician and know the ins and outs of business practice. You have to show up as the kind of person that is going to make a difference. And I believe leaders have an opportunity with business. Business is such a huge part of our life on earth, and we spend such a lot of time in it. It's such a necessary part of how we provide goods and services. And so business has the responsibility, and it has an enormous contribution to make by the way we conduct ourselves there. We shouldn't leave it to politicians. And we also shouldn't leave it to short-term thinking, like just trying to get to the next quarterly cycle. We've seen that kind of short-term thinking, both in business, in politics, has a very deleterious effect on outcomes, and certainly on how engaged people feel when they're part of those kind of short-term systems. It's inherently demotivating. And it also leaves out of the equation some of the more intangible aspects of our outcomes, such as what is the influence we have on the wider population, what through our reputation, what the brand stands for, what is the effect that we have on the ecosystem. You know, what kind of messages are we putting out there about what it is to be human and how we can best live our lives? Now, business leaders might say, well, that's not really my responsibility. Leave that up to the politicians, leave that up to the charities or civil society or the religious leaders. But because it's such a huge part of human activity, it's a missed opportunity if we don't also focus on business and on specifically on leaders and how they conduct themselves. And another thing that happens is that, you know, with trying to chase, you know, the bottom line, even if it's a triple bottom line, that's still a very narrow gauge. We need to understand that leaders have this opportunity to provide also a moral compass for how we do things. And I think that conversation is still in its infancy, because we see around us not just chaos and multiple system stresses. We also see a lack of decency, a lack of integrity, a lack of authenticity, a lack of humanity, a lack of compassion. How are those things going to move in the world? They're going to move because we choose them and we place them in front of other people. We carry ourselves with those as our guiding stars.
And what's coming up for me is, you know, this thought of how can we carry ourselves with that more expansive, harmonious, kind of light-filled energy when in the perception of many leaders, either they are under attack, so to speak, or they must protect themselves in the marketplace, or there's so many changes and they're really just trying to survive, and it's very fear driven. And
Yes.
so it's hard to perhaps, put meaning to the bigger, things in our world when we're just trying to protect our own jobs, our families, our teams, our organizations. So how, if you can speak to that, like, how do we shift from that discord of like, I need to protect myself, I'm separate from you, right? For example, competitor or, other culture or whatever that I'm clashing with, and bring more of that lightness, that love, more of what the laws of existence in natural intelligence are all about.
Yeah. Well, certainly when one starts to look into natural intelligence and starts to experience it oneself, it becomes self-evident. We've seen that isolationism, we've seen that separatism doesn't produce the results that we think it's going to. It always produces unintended consequences. And so to protect oneself sets up immediately this idea that the rest of life is a threat. When we start to examine the energy of life, we see that it is beautifully unified. It is impeccably coordinated. And we also see that its modus operandus is to share. And we see that through this sharing, through this magnanimity that it expresses, that there is actually enough for all of us. We've seen this also in the environmental debate, where we've treated aspects or issues in isolation, and we've seen that the damage that that has done. Once we start to factor in all the elements of life that is connected to, then we start to build up a much more holistic picture of how nature really operates, not how we think it has or how we've imposed some kind of thinking upon it. So when we say we're not expecting business leaders to do this by themselves, but it is inherently in our best interest to start to look at how we can do things differently. Some people would argue that competition has given us, more excellent goods and services. But actually, when we see things like the sharing of source code for AI and stuff like that, we see that actually when we start to share the best of what we've got, it means we can also receive the best of what others bring towards us. And this means that we become collaborative, we become cooperative, and this is sort of inherently much more satisfying an environment for us as human beings to work in. I think the experiment for separatism and isolation and competition has run its course. We've seen where that has taken us. We don't need to keep repeating the experiment. We have seen individually that people are really struggling, and this is increasing. We've seen collectively that these individual struggles scale up because the whole system is connected. You can't have such stress on an individual level without it having some effect on the collective levels. So we would argue that there is an opportunity for business leaders to go above and beyond. We like to say that this information on natural intelligence broadens the view, broadens the lens through which we're operating. When we're looking through a very narrow aperture, we're only going to see what is underneath that aperture. As we bring the new into view, we start to see, there are possibilities that we never thought possible before. And this means that there are solutions waiting for us that we're not yet even considering because our focus is too narrow. there are a few individuals, there are a few businesses and business leaders who have gone above and beyond, and they have been commercially successful. They have excellent reputations. Commercial success and collective coherence, they're not incompatible. They're not mutually exclusive. We need to expand our understanding of what life is if we want life to go well. And therefore, we need to understand our thinking on business if we want business to go well. The time when all of this is going to be known, it's going to be like second nature to us, is coming very soon with all the kinds of incredible research that is happening. So business leaders that disregard it in favor of a short-term picture are the ones that are going to get left behind. So that isn't a fearful motivation. It should be an inspiring motivation to say, there's so much more that's possible that we haven't yet considered.
So how do we do this? How do we align with these, with this basic energy, if you will, so that we could, bring more meaning, more purpose, more vision, and so on into our lives and into our organizations, and expand something that's much bigger than that. And as you said, become conduits for these new ideas, these new solutions that can not only help us, they can also help others, because it's like a shift, a mind shift from me or you, right, to kind of me and you, right, collectively.
Yes.
Rise together. And I think that's the biggest shift. And it requires us to change our own inner state, because if I'm operating from fear or scarcity, right, for me to choose love and harmony and well-being for the other, my own inner system may interject, may not allow me to do that for a protective survival reason. So I love that in your work you speak of how to access that state of being that is aligned with the natural intelligence of all that creates and sustains life in this earth. And that when we do that, it helps others to access it too. We actually build more of that momentum for our team members, our family members, our community members, and the world at large. So how do we do this?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to condense all of that down into a soundbite, and we'll do a practice together so we can start to access the edge of it together. It's like anything, our very first day at school, our very first day in the gym when we haven't been exercising, our very first day on a new diet, our very first day in a new relationship. We're a little bit halting. We're a little bit clumsy. And that's the same with accessing natural intelligence. At first, it seems a little confusing, a little perplexing. But very quickly, by bringing your conscious attention into your being, not just your physical body, but the wider energetic field that you are, you start to see that energy is indeed present all the time. It never has a day off. And so once you start to see that and you start to access those properties and those qualities, you realize that you're working with an exemplary substance. And it's very encouraging. As you bring that into your own experience, so you then become the recipient of the qualities and properties that are encoded into that energy. You yourself feel more expansive, more spacious. There's more room to work. So that, gets us over people feeling stressed and restricted and limited and compacted. You start to access those properties of lightness. So you can feel more joy, you feel more levity, you're more lighthearted. It changes your whole emotional state. And you also do feel more harmonious. You do feel that you're not so much in conflict. you're not looking for a us or them kind of mindset. And you start to see that if this energy is in me, it's in everything. And we can explore that so readily, so simply. It's just that humanity in its last few thousand years has been rabidly pursuing a thought-dominated orientation towards life, imposing on it a kind of mental construct of what life is. And that in itself has shut down the parameters, has shut down the possibilities of what life can reveal to us. But when we start to interact with life, not just as a conceptual framework, but as a living, energetic presence, then we start to feel our hearts open, and what we find is that there's a lot of humanity in our heart. There's a lot of love, there's a lot of kindness, there's a lot of compassion. Why? We don't have to generate that individually as human beings. The energy of life provides that for us in abundant supply. So accessing these properties and qualities is literally like opening the store cupboard of life. And we find that there's a lot there that we can use. And then we ourselves carry this predisposition that the energy itself holds, that it gets expressed through us. We are the conduit. This is how it finds its way into the world. It is everywhere, but in order to be realized, it has to be experienced and lived, and it has to be chosen. So life is designed that way, and human beings thus far have not really understood that. And that's where we diverge from what is possible to what we've created.
And what's exciting is that with all of the research that's coming out, through, for example, the Global Coherence Initiative, the Global Consciousness Project, and other things like it, it's like we're becoming conscious of the fact that how we feel, how we think is absolutely creating our perception of reality. And that, our true nature is that lightness, that state of love, those higher frequencies. And anytime we're not in that, we're experiencing a depleted, what we might call a negative state. It's an opportunity to be with that and to love those parts of ourselves, just like we would love a competitor or and when we do that, that's when I sense that more of that light can shine through. And we can access new solutions, which is, I think, what we all truly desperately want, because what we've been doing hasn't been working.
It's clear. And one thing I would say about that, the parts of ourselves that are stuck in some kind of limitation, this is just really, this energy cannot fundamentally change its nature. It's encoded and designed in such a way as it retains its original nature, even when it is in its malleable state, brought into different patterns. It has this sort of miraculous ability to retain its essence, even while it's being formed into maybe the energy of anger or the energy of hatred. And so there is nothing in existence which is inherently negative. It's all compressed light. It's all compressed energy. And once you stop compressing it, it just naturally reasserts itself into its original state. So it's not that we need to get rid of anger or get rid of jealousy or whatever it is that we might be beset with. We just need to learn how to desist from ordering it. And there is a lot of misunderstanding about how we navigate, how we show up as human beings. And so it's that misunderstanding which inadvertently causes us to compress energy instead of align with it in its naturally expansive state. And that can be unlearned. So it's all good news.
Can you share just a little bit more, because this is fascinating to me, thank you, a little bit more about what you've just said around that, we don't want to get rid of these emotions per se, but to, I think you said basically, and forgive me, I want to make sure that I get your words. So tell us, if we're not getting rid of it, what are we doing instead?
Well, first of all, we're recognizing that the thoughts which create those sensations, because they're really just energy sensations, these patterns that we call feelings or emotions. I prefer the word feelings because it does what it says on the tin. That when we create those, we're creating them out of a substance which is inherently expansive, light-filled, and harmonious. So just knowing that. So what tends to happen is when people experience these so-called negative qualities, they misidentify them because they're taking place within our being. We tend to think, oh, I am angry, I am jealous, I am hateful, I am ungenerous. And we assume that they are part of our character and our makeup. And that's, again, just simply a misunderstanding. All that's happening is that our thought life has, without us realizing it, ordered the energy to take that pattern. But because it's the energy is within us, we feel that tightness, we feel that constriction, we see it, we say, oh my goodness, oh no, that's happening in me, therefore it is me. So we misidentify. So the first thing is to detach from it, know that we've used that energy to create that sensation. And simply by either changing the ordering thought pattern or desisting from continuing the previous one, the energy will just release again. I mean, we all experience this all the time, every day. So we might have an occasional irritation as we're driving through the city at a different driver that's cut in on us. We felt that it doesn't stay forever. It passes away again. That's the energy just releasing again. Those emotions that feel more deep-seated, they are because we are continually ordering the thoughts which create them, and that comes from a belief system. So when we continually order something with our thoughts, our system is designed to register, well, she ordered that yesterday, she's ordering it today, she's still ordering, she's still ordering, she's still ordering. Let's park that in the subconscious. And from there, she won't need to use up so much of her conscious bandwidth on that. We'll park it in the subconscious. And from there, it will be able to order her experience without having to pass through the conscious mind. So we've done this as human beings. We've had so many belief systems from misidentifying our experience. So much subconscious material is then stored there. It bypasses the conscious and is able to inform the energy of the patterns to take without us even being part of the decision. And this is why we get triggered. This is why we go on automatic pilot. So, and this is also why we take such pains to explain what the energy is, how you interact with it, how you utilize it, because it's not rocket science, but we need to know that if we want to interact with it skillfully and effectively.
Thank you. This is just incredible what you're sharing here, that we are ordering, if you will, those states from, these higher vibrations, if you will. And it makes sense because they say, even Buddha said, suffering comes from, attachment. Yes. So when I love so deeply, I care so deeply about something to the extreme, meaning to the neglect of, the other perspective, then I'm creating anger, fear, sadness, whatever that is, from that over attachment, from
Yes.
the love, essentially. I
Yes.
care so much that it's hurting me.
Right.
And that is such a profound mind shift. I'm so grateful to you for that.
Yeah. The folks at HeartMath call it overcare.
That's right.
There's care, which is beneficial, and then there's overcare, where it spills over into something else. And anytime we overdo something, it's because we have those hidden deficits in our subconscious, which are driving our thinking and behavior without us realizing it. So, yeah, we need to get to the bottom of that. And, it may sound like, gosh, this is the big thing to take on, and it's going to be a long journey because, there's now 8 billion of us here. And how are we going to get around to all of that? But it doesn't take much. And this is why, when we talk about business leaders or political leaders or thought leaders or visionaries, it only takes a few people to stand up and make a difference. And that galvanizes and draws those people who are ready to see that and take that next step with them. That's how it works. And I won't go into the mechanics of it all right now, maybe a conversation for another day, but the study of energy and how it behaves gives us everything we need to know about how life works, how human beings work, what's possible for us, what are the principles we should be operating by, what are the laws. All the information is there. And so that's why for us it is the central thing that we share.
Thank you, Jenna. Would you be willing, I'm not sure if we still have time for this, would you be willing to guide us through an experience so that we ourselves can connect with those parts of ourselves?
Sure, I would love to. With the caveat that one doesn't do this once and it's forever fixed. It's taken us individually many decades and collectively many millennia to drift away from our natural state. So 15 minutes isn't going to repair all of that in one fell swoop. But we can maybe just have a little taste of the fact that the energy is present and that we can interact with it. I like to do this with my eyes closed, if you're comfortable with that.
Thank you.
Just because when we close our eyes, we shut down those visual parameters and it makes it easier for us to focus. So the first thing we do is make sure that we're sitting up straight. The energy channels through the spine and along either side of the spine govern a lot of our subtle energy in the physical body. Sitting up straight allows us to have an uninterrupted flow. We very slightly drop the chin to open up the back of the head and the neck. And then we bring our attention into the breath. Now, we are not making ourselves breathe. We are simply noticing that the breath is coming and going. And we allow the breath to be long and slow and deep. We might notice that as we allow the breath to fall into a deeper rhythm, that it has a naturally calming effect upon our physiology, our emotionality, and our mentality. So instantaneously, just by noticing the breath and letting it drop into a deeper register, we are providing a conducive environment to start to notice our own experience. And we would start by saying, notice your left hand. So that is bringing your conscious attention into your left hand. And as you do so, you notice that the left hand suddenly becomes alive to you. It was there before you brought your attention into it. It certainly hasn't just come into existence. And yet the very act of bringing your attention into the left hand, your conscious attention has connected to the energy in your left hand. And you start to notice that your left hand is full of energy. You might feel it pulsing, might even feel it throbbing. You can feel that there's more energy in some parts of the hand than in other parts. And so now we can say, yes, I experience my hand. Before I brought my conscious attention there, my hand existed. The energy was there, the form was there, the function was there. But now I'm participating in the existence of that hand by noticing it. And the energy in the hand is starting to reveal itself to our conscious attention. So this is how conscious attention translates already existing energy into experience. Now let us bring our attention into our heart. Continuing to allow the breath to be long, slow, and deep. You'll notice that the breath is gently moving the region of the heart. So as the lungs expand and collapse and create this movement in the chest, so our focus on the heart allows us to notice the energy in the heart. So start to notice that the energy of the heart is very even, as if it is highly pixelated. And the energy of the heart is also ordered, as if it is highly organized. You might notice that the energy of the heart, simply by noticing it, not even manipulating it, is naturally of its own accord expansive. So produces a sensation of spaciousness. And notice too that the very energy which is making up the physical heart is inherently light. And this is what gives rise to the heart feeling light and maybe even giddy on occasion. And when our heart is open and light, we naturally, automatically feel encouraged, empowered, inspired. We feel that more is possible than in our everyday state. Now let us try one more thing together, and that is to bring our conscious noticing attention into the energy which makes up our very being. So the sum total of our physical, emotional, mental, heart, and energetic selves. That there is the presence of energy throughout our entire being. And when we sit quietly without the mind interrupting the process or trying to assert particular thoughts or opinions, we find that we have peace and spaciousness to notice the very energy of life itself, manifesting as our particular beingness in this moment. And we did not design this energy. We did not create its structure, nor its nature, nor design its function. All of this is pre-existing. But we find that we have, if we like, been given this energy as the building block of our own being. And that it does in and of itself have a presence. How do we know this? Because we are alive and noticing it. It is the livingness of us. It is our very conscious presence. And everything that we are, everything that we are capable of, can be traced back to this. And this same energy exists beyond our being and fills the whole quantum universe with its presence. And all phenomenon in existence arise within it and pass away back into it. Like a web of light being drawn up into a certain form and then drop back down into the primordial web. And here we find our connection to all of life in all its forms, manifest and unmanifest. And for us as individuals, we have a responsibility as to how we interact with this energy, how we align with it, how we utilize it. And it is this that creates the pathway to us being able to make contribution to express what is innate within us. And if we consider that we are dealing with a substance which is inherently expansive, light-filled, and harmonious, to name but a few qualities, it's deeply intelligent. And the news is all good. Thank you. It's hard to take a tour of the universe in just a few minutes, but hopefully people will be able to touch into some aspects of what's available to us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I can only speak for myself, that you've given me a great gift to be able to access the more expansive part of myself. And for that, I'm very grateful. And my sense is that you've done that for many, many, many others today. And as you said, it's a practice. It's a practice. It's a coming back to this, especially in our noisy, chaotic world, and to reconnect and align.
Yes. Well, there are free resources on our website. So if anybody wants to try out a few little practices, they can find those on our website.
Thank you. And how can people learn more? I know you do incredible keynotes. In addition to that, you've got amazing programs online and, of course, the mapping system. How can people learn more about that?
Well, our website is pretty much our shop front. So that's www.intelligent.life. There's no .com or .co.uk. It's just .life, intelligent.life. We were very lucky with that URL. So there's a little bit more information about natural intelligence, about our model and how we work. There's a whole tab on the mapping system. I would say to people, though, that we are just about to relaunch our mapping system. So the beta version that we're using right now, it's okay. It's not bad, but we're just about to launch a beautiful, slick version, which we're very happy about. So by all means, sign up for mapping, but just know that there's going to be a much nicer version coming very soon. And then there's other tabs for finding, our services, and there's one called resources. So they'll be able to find articles and meditations and talks and things like that. And and in December this year, we are all going to be meeting in Mexico, which is very exciting. So if anyone wants to join us for 4 days in Bacala Lagoon. And so there's information about that too. It's a wonderful program. We only do one a year, in-person program. And so that's coming up in December.
Well, thank you. Thank you from all my heart, Jeddah, for all that you do, for all that you've given to all of our listeners and viewers today from your heart. And I do feel optimistic about what's possible for humanity, and really grateful that you're helping us to get there.
Yeah, it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for the way you've conducted this, and the chats that we've had outside of this has been wonderful. So I feel like I've met a kindred spirit, and I'm really grateful for that.